This YouTube channel is just about brand new. I've only got 8 videos up so far, including this one, and yet 13,000 of you have found me and subscribed already. So before going any further, I think it's time I introduce myself and explain how it is I got to be teaching medieval literature here on YouTube. So hi, I'm Dr. Gavin Davis, and welcome to Gavin the Medievalist, a YouTube channel of old books with swords in them brought to you by a professional. This introduction video is going to be the story of how I went from being a full-time academic to making videos here on YouTube. At the end of the video, I'll cover some rapid-fire fun facts about the channel, like where I got the channel's logo, and I also want to talk with you about how you can help me make this project continue to happen. I think many of you might relate to my reasons for studying medieval literature, which I think are profoundly unoriginal. In short, I read The Lord of the Rings when I was 8, and I still haven't gotten over it. But instead of turning from Tolkien to other works of modern medieval fantasy, which honestly I'm still not very well versed in, I ended up going the other direction, towards the historical literature that lay behind these beloved stories. When I took my first college class in English, which was a month-long intensive course on Edgar Allan Poe, I was struck by the community of people who were invested in loving these stories by working together to understand them and find meaning in them. With so many incredible teachers as role models, I was like, that's the job for me. So after graduating with a major in English and minors in medieval and early modern studies and theology, I worked at Barnes & Noble for a couple of years before joining Penn State's 6-year MA-PhD program, seeking a career as a university professor. My time at Penn State was honestly pretty tough. I got there right before COVID started. But it was especially valuable to me for 3 reasons. 1, I had access to a phenomenal library. 2, I had a strong dissertation committee who let me pursue what I was interested in, which was swords in medieval literary culture. But they made me defend every inch of my argument, which professionalized me in the practice of rigorous scholarship. Most of all, though, the thing I'm most grateful for is that Penn State let me teach. Over the course of my contracts, I taught about 12 sections of Writing 1 in addition to 1 literature course, and I loved it. And I dare say I was good at it too. My experience in the literature classroom was exceptionally formative for me personally, so I was grateful to get to be a part of shaping that experience for the next generation of students. So what happened? Well, there are 2 main reasons I'm not currently working at a university. First, I recognize that the university education landscape has changed. In today's, shall we say, rapidly developing world of AI, polarization, and uncertainty, the job market right now just isn't as rewarding to an education in the humanities. If anything, I think it's a shame, since I believe in this brave new world, art, literature, history, the things that make us human become more important, not less so. Which actually leads me to my second reason for turning to public-facing education. The humanities are important, but they're so important that it's not just dedicated English majors who should have access to this kind of content, but everyone. In my experience, some of the most nerdy people about medieval stuff aren't English majors, but trade workers, engineers, STEM folks, military veterans, all my friends working their 9 to 5 and graveyard shifts, and all the folks who play Dungeons and Dragons, which is like everyone these days. So about the time I was supposed to be applying for academic positions, I met up for ice cream with a friend of mine who produces one of the larger tech YouTube channels to talk about the books he was reading. And he was like, hey Gavin, you should think about putting this content up on YouTube. And even though I'd spent the last decade of education preparing for a traditional academic position, this career shift clicked for me as a means of getting the content I cared about to the people who might find it valuable. So when I graduated with my PhD in English this last May, I didn't apply to any academic positions. Instead, I got a video camera as a graduation present, turned a room in the house into a studio, and taught myself DaVinci's video editing software over the summer. The question was going to be, would there be an audience? If I make college-level content on medieval literature available on YouTube, would people watch? It's been just over 2 months since I posted my first video comparing 3 editions of Beowulf, and here you are. At the end of the day, I don't have any illusions as to what this channel is. It's not an actual college course, and I didn't name it Medieval Lit 101. It's got my name on it, since ultimately the content on this channel will reflect my own interests, values, and expertise on the Middle Ages. This is why my early content has been mostly about Old English martial literary culture, since that's what my narrow research focus was, and has been the easiest for me to produce while I figure out the back end of being a YouTuber. Now, much of my interest is on the intersection of literary and martial culture, so I do expect that that will be a continuing theme throughout this channel's existence. Eventually, though, I do want this channel to be a decent resource on the literature of the Middle Ages more broadly, one that maintains a university level of rigor while being accessible on YouTube. In time, I think we can expect to see more Old English poetry and history, much of which doesn't make it into the usual college survey course, before moving towards other periods and genres. Eventually, I'd like to take a crack at the Canterbury Tales and maybe look at the sagas, which are distant cousins of my graduate research focus. A major long term project, however, will be a fairly thorough exploration of the Arthurian legends and chivalric literature as it developed across the Middle Ages. That's a series I'm hoping to get started sometime this spring. In addition to the literature from the Middle Ages, another subject I'm eager to introduce to you all is the formal study of medievalism, which is a technical term for the post-medieval Middle Ages. In other words, the Middle Ages as we remember it today in culture, as distinct from how it actually was. So instead of Mallory, Chaucer, and Christine de Pizan, think Tolkien, Ren Fairs, and whatever the new Robert Eggers werewolf movie is going to be. The theories behind medievalism give us the robust scholarly apparatus to support the study of the medieval as it exists as a cultural phenomenon today. Besides being fun, after all, medievalism tends to engage with more current popular works, I think this practice is important because if we're going to be introspective about our relationship with the past, we should be aware of what we're bringing to the table and what the memory of the Middle Ages is that we share collectively that connects us with our shared sense of the past. Ultimately, the most important thing about the study of all things medieval isn't the fun facts we learn along the way, but the tools of critical analysis that equip us to engage ethically and thoughtfully with ideas and texts from a vastly different time and place. This is why, as much as I can within copyright, I try to show you the words on the pages that I'm working with. It's not my place to be a gatekeeper of the authentic Middle Ages. Rather, I want to make sure that you have access to the scholarly tools of critical analysis that can help you read these texts for yourself. In other words, if I can make the critical analysis of medieval stories interesting and entertaining to you, that's what this channel is all about. Well, that and old books with swords in them. In the short term, I'm still working on how to produce content more consistently and ideally more frequently. It's about all I can do to make around 3 videos a month, but by covering some of the earliest vernacular literature we have available, I'm setting up for a slow crawl through the literary culture of medieval England. In the last few videos, I've talked about the Germanic legends and some of the conventions of traditional martial culture those legends represent. In the next few videos, I want to look at how that martial culture intersected with history and the historical record. Around December or January, I want to take a break by talking about formal models for understanding medievalism, the popular imagination of the Middle Ages. And in the spring, I want to begin our quest through the legends of King Arthur. Now, if all this is something you're excited about, that's fantastic. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm grateful for this platform, which is connecting me to an audience of people who share my passion for old books with swords in them. This channel is for you. But if you believe in this project and want to help support this channel in its critical, formative stages, I have a favor to ask. And that's if you would just consider supporting me on Patreon for $3 a month. Making this channel is my full-time job, but due to the niche nature of my content, it's more likely I'm going to have few people who are really interested than lots of people who are only kind of interested. This means that from the get-go, this channel is less likely to find success from ads and affiliates, and is more likely to rely on fewer followers who really value the content I'm putting out. So right now, I'm only offering 2 tiers on Patreon, a $3 a month option and a $5 a month option for those who want to support even more. In other words, about the price of a cup of coffee. I'm not going to be putting much up there right now. And that's because I don't want to make promises I can't keep. Even though I hope to someday do behind the scenes vlogs, reading updates, and update letters, it's as much as I can do right now to make 3 videos a month, since it's just me back here, researching, writing, filming, editing, and producing these videos. This Patreon, then, is for those people who just believe in this project and want to help me keep it going now in its formative stages. If you're one of those people, I would be so grateful if you would consider supporting me for $3 a month. Thousands of people watch these videos, and that's awesome. But just a few hundred Patreon supporters would make all the difference for me. Thanks for joining in this video. It's time to wrap this up, and since you already know where the channel is headed next, I'll end with some rapid-fire Q&A. 1. What's my favorite medieval story? Beowulf. I mean, yeah. 2. What's my favorite sword? If you couldn't guess, it's Hergrim, King Theoden's sword I have displayed behind me. I've actually published a paper on the swords in Lord of the Rings, so the reason that's the case will have to be a future video. 3. Where'd I get the Lewis chessmen and the unicorn tapestry? The Lewis chessmen were a gift from forever ago, so I'm afraid I don't know for sure, but I'll bet if you Googled Lewis chessmen, you can find some replicas that are similar. This unicorn tapestry is actually a blanket from a company called Strike Gently Co. that, in addition to blankets, they make some pretty punk rock enamel pins. What do I do when I'm not making videos? I do some music, but I'm an avid wargamer, so probably painting miniatures, playing Warhammer, or Age of Empires 4. Finally, where's the logo come from? Well, I drew it myself, and there's 3 elements to it. There's the dog, which... Here. Good boy. Here we go. Nope, sit. Good boy. Yeah. This is Dane. He loves pets, treats, and sleeping all day long. The sword comes from my days in historical European martial arts. I trained for 2 years in German longsword, and while I did so, this is the sword that I used, so I wanted to represent it on the logo if I could. Lastly, there's the colors, saffron and black, which is the color scheme of my Empire army for Warhammer Fantasy. Who knows, maybe someday this logo or these motifs will end up on a mug or a sweatshirt. That's all for now, folks. This might not have been the job I had in mind when I started grad school all those years ago, but boy howdy am I glad to be here with you. If you believe in this project and want to help me keep this going, please consider supporting me on Patreon. There's links in the description below. And even if you can't, I'm still glad you're here to learn about some old books with swords in them. Till then, I'm Gavin the Medievalist, and I'll see you next time.